And so I'm curious, why do you think there are so many different diets, and why do you think there's so much controversy there? And then in your opinion, what is the ideal diet for humans?
$64 million question there.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of #FoodTruth, where we will be talking all things foods with incredible experts from how food impacts our health, our environment, and our behaviors. I'm your co-host, Sharon, attorney turned food nerd.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Kevin Lyon, family medicine physician and co-founder of the Anti-A.G.E's Foundation.
And today we will be talking about plant-based nutrition for all ages and what your doctor may not know. Today's guest is Dr. Michael Klaper.
Dr. Michael Klaper is a licensed family medicine physician in both California and Hawaii. He graduated from the University of Illinois College of Medicine in 1972 and completed his residency at Vancouver General Hospital with the University of British Columbia. Dr. Klaper has published 2 books on the topic of vegan nutrition and has appeared in several films related to vegan diet and wellness, including Eat This, Cowspiracy, and What the Health. Throughout his career, Dr. Klaper has held a variety of highly regarded positions, including NASA Nutritional Advisor, Director of the Institute of Nutrition Education and Research, co-founder of the environmental organization EarthSave International, and served on the board of advisors for the Nutrition and Preventative Medicine Task Force of the American Medical Student Association. Dr. Klaper is a passionate and devoted educator of physicians and other healthcare professionals about the importance of nutrition in clinical practice and integrative medicine. Dr. Klaper, thank you so much for being here today.
You're so welcome. It's good to be with you and your viewers.
Awesome. So for anybody listening, we just have a few basic questions just to ask you. First, we want to know why you became a doctor, and then when and why you became plant-based.
Oh my, you got an hour or two? I became a physician because I was the kid in the family who wanted everything to be okay. And I still to this day, I just want everybody to be all right, whether they're people, animals, the forest. I just want everything to be okay. And that humanistic urge came up through my love of biology. I spent my early summers on my uncle's dairy farm in Wisconsin, and my summers were filled with animals and thunderstorms and canoeing on lakes, and just the natural world made so much sense to me. Biology made so much sense. That the two just naturally came together. I knew I was going to be a physician when I was 8 years old or so. And I always focused on the doctor on the TV shows, and I just knew that I belonged among them. So it was a natural. My basic sciences, pre-medical studies at the University of Illinois came very natural to me. In 1972, 50 years ago, I walked across the stage at McCormick Place in Chicago, and they handed me my medical diploma and called me doctor for the first time. And it's been 50 of the most wonderful years of my life, helping people in the highest profession I can imagine. When did I become plant-based? 1981. I was a resident in anesthesiology at Vancouver General Hospital. After 6 years of frustrating general practice in metropolitan Vancouver, I got so frustrated not being able to help my patients. They were all just getting more obese and hypertensive and diabetic, and I didn't know what to tell them. This was, again, the late 1970s. I didn't know anything about nutrition. So I left general practice, went to anesthesia. At least there's a situation I'm in charge in. At least I knew what to tell those folks. I was on the cardiovascular anesthesia service, and day after day, I'm putting people to sleep and watching surgeons open their chest and open the arteries in their heart and pull out this yellow, greasy gunk called atherosclerosis. It's clogging their heart arteries, giving them heart attacks and strokes, clogging their brains, all over the arteries all over their body. And my dad died of clogged arteries, and there were already studies in the book saying that this stuff can be melted away with a plant-based diet. And I was getting all sorts of messages from the operating room that if I didn't change my diet, it was going to be me on that operating table with that striker saw going up my sternum, and I sure didn't want that to happen. And at the same time, I was getting messages from my heart, not my coronaries, but my spiritual heart. I had, as I said, done a lot of my growing up on my uncle's dairy farm, and I know the violence that goes into all meat production. I saw the old dairy cow shot in the head. I chopped the heads off chickens. I just knew the violence inherent in meat. And it was pointed out to me one day that if I really wanted to be a man of nonviolence, then I can't be paying for the flesh of animals and paying for their death at the slaughterhouse and call myself a man of virtue and healing. So between the two messages, what I was seeing in the operating room and what I knew in my heart was true, I stopped eating animal flesh in 1981 and dairy products. Well, my body loved it. Within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high blood pressure went to normal. My high cholesterol went to normal. I felt great waking up in a nice, lean body. And at that point, the light went on, and I knew I didn't want to be an anesthesiologist and spend my time putting people to sleep. I'd rather go back to general practice and help them wake up. And so I did. I left my anesthesia residency, much to my parents' dismay, and went back to general practice and started sharing this plant-based information with my patients. And those who were able to follow it, they got leaner, their high blood pressure came down, their high cholesterols came down. They turned into normal, healthy people right before my eyes. It was stunning for both the patients and me. And at that point, there's no turning back. I mean, that's medicine at its highest, rather than just giving out more beta blockers and insulin. There's a time for those drugs. But to base your entire practice on that felt hollow and bankrupt. I knew that plant-based diets hold the key to true healing. So I've been a plant-based doctor ever since, and I'm the happiest doctor I know. My patients get healthy right before my eyes. So, and now it's just a matter. Now I'm spending my time trying to awaken the young medical students. I go to the medical schools and talk to the first, second, third year med students and tell them it's the food your patients are eating. That's why they're sitting in front of your doctor. And if you get them on a plant-based diet, you too can become the happiest doctor you know. So in a small or semi-small capsule, that's the answer to your questions about why I became a physician and how I became plant-based.
So, so much of your story, it's an amazing story, quite the journey that you've been on. And a lot of that resonates with me. A little bit about my own story or how I became plant-based, at least, because I've only been plant-based for about 2 years now. So it became kind of made the switch shortly into my intern year of family medicine residency after I saw one of the documentaries that you're featured in, What the Health, Netflix. And then that kind of got the ball rolling. It was kind of a shock to my system, really. I felt like I had just finished medical school. I'm in my intern year, and somehow I made it that far without being told or taught really any of this stuff. And I was shocked. I was almost dumbfounded, a little bit frustrated, honestly, that so many of my peers and so many of my attendings that I look up to aren't talking about this at all. And this isn't just a little thing. This is the key to our health, and it really is controlling our patients' health and all of the chronic diseases that we're working so hard to try to treat. And the idea that it wasn't being taught to me, it was baffling, really. But like you kind of said, once you know the key, there's really no going back. And for me, it was night and day. The switch, the transition was that easy. Just like you, I lost 25 pounds in a matter of months just from eating whole food, plant-based. I woke up, I felt great. My energy was through the roof. My happiness was through the roof. And I wasn't sitting there counting calories and counting carbs. I was just eating plants, and as much of them as I wanted every single day. And my belly was full, and life is good. I didn't have really any. I'm a younger guy. I didn't have any hypertension or diabetes or anything beforehand, but just my overall health just feels so much better now. And so I will say, once I made that switch and I began now preaching that and teaching that to my patients, I noticed for me it was kind of an uphill struggle, especially early on. I felt like a lot of my coworkers, a lot of my attendings didn't really take me seriously. they kind of thought it was almost a joke or like a fad. They didn't really know any of the research that I was kind of quoting to them, like these Esselstyn studies and talking about, Michael Greger and Neil Bernard, all these people, Michael Klaper, that I look up to. Nobody really knew what I was talking about, and I felt very much kind of on my own in this weird place in medicine that you'd think I'd have more support. And I'm so thankful that you're doing your mission of teaching medical students and going around to medical schools and trying to increase that knowledge and better their curriculum. That's so important. But I do want to ask you, like, what was your response from your fellow coworkers and your co-residents or anybody else that you were seeing or working with at the time when you kind of first made that switch? How did people react to you, or how was it, that those first few years kind of with patients and kind of going against the grain a little bit?
Oh, sir, what a story to hear, to see how much has changed and how much hasn't changed. And the response I got in 1983, 4, 5 is the same response you're getting here. They called me the nuts and berries doctor, and oh yeah, I was a doctor of last resort when the patients were just getting more obese and sicker and more diabetic. Send him to Klaper, see what he can do with his crazy diet. And but I didn't have 100% success, and not everybody's able to make this transition. But those who were, they went back to see the doctor who sent them to me, and I got a few calls and cards from doctor. I see the importance of nutrition. Thank you. They were not enough to do it themselves, but at least the door was open. And occasionally you get the doctor who actually does it for themselves as well, because the doctor, there's nothing more dispiriting. They have the exam room door open and the doctor walks in with a big pot belly and a pocket full of statins and beta blockers, and he's the old man himself. You got to set a good example for your patients, and it's really inspiring when the doctors themselves do it. But slowly, it's starting to change, and you just can't get discouraged for a number of reasons. You never know who hears. Let the peanut galleries on the side chatter away. It doesn't matter. The truth is the truth here, and your patients become the ambassadors and the statements of progress, and keep track of how many patients, as you reduce their statin doses, reduce their hypertensive doses, reduce their insulin doses, documented. And you're able to give a nice report at grand rounds at your local hospital there, because this is real stuff, and real patients are not only overcoming real diseases, but the patients who are not changing their diet and staying in the old model, they die of real diseases on real operating tables from diseases from operations they don't really need. A lot of these bypasses, etc. So just keep your eye on the prize, man. Just practice the kind of medicine needs to be practiced. Speak the truth to these patients, and your colleagues will hear or they won't. It's okay. As I said, they don't. The conveyor belt never stops moving. There's a steady stream of young medical students coming up. They're going into their residencies now. They will be the attending physicians. And if we can turn that light on in their head when they're a first, second, third year student, it gets a lot easier. Then you hear, oh yeah, I've been using plant-based medicine in my practice for years. That's what we're trying to get out of these young students' lips here. So, but yeah, it's still early times, and there's antagonism, and it's frightening to patients, frightening to doctors. It threatens their economic model. Well, what if all my patients get healthy? And it threatens their whole viewing of health and disease and what's really going on. The etiology unknown. We don't know why arteries clog. We don't know why people go diabetic. Yes, doctor, it's from the food they're eating, is the truth of it. You'd think, for medical scientists who can identify a genetic mismatch on gene 821 on chromosome 14, boy, we can home in on that with precision, But the thought that cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas might be clogging up our patients' arteries, this somehow is too abstruse a concept for many of our colleagues to get. But the medical literature is just burgeoning now. It's hard to open up a medical journal without seeing some article on plant-based diets for diabetes, plant-based diets for artery disease, plant-based diets for Crohn's disease, etc. So the times are changing in our profession, and also the public is getting aware of it. They're demanding that the doctors know something about nutrition. It's embarrassing that we don't teach doctors and we can't speak to our patients more cogently about nutrition. But as you say, films like Forks Over Knives and What the Health and Cowspiracy and Eating Ourselves to Extinction, Eating You Alive, these are getting out there, the game changers. And the public is demanding. And eventually, are like the politicians, when the public demands that the politicians come along, same thing. Eventually, the doctors will come along there. But speak your truth clearly. It's more important than ever. Don't get discouraged.
So, do you think that the main reason why many physicians aren't recommending a plant-based diet, even when I hear coworkers when patients are coming to them and they're trying to recommend a healthy diet, they'll recommend very vague diet and lifestyle modifications. They don't really get into the nuts and bolts of what that means, and they certainly aren't, for the most part, from what I've overheard, recommending a whole food plant-based diet. So is that, in your view, just because of a lack of education?
90% is they just don't know. First of all, plant-based diets aside, they don't believe that nutrition has anything to do with any of these things. Patients are never going to change what they eat, and it's never been shown that diet makes any difference at all. Those are the two fallbacks that let them stay comfortable staying stuck, and dismissing this powerful tool, this powerful truth right in front of them. But we don't learn anything about nutrition. No one mentions it to us in 4 years of med school, so you can't really blame the doc that way. And never been shown that food does anything. My cousin is a gastroenterologist, and I asked him, Charlie, do you think what your patients are eating and smearing on their gut wall has anything to do with why that gut wall gets so inflamed and colitis and Nah, never been shown it has any effect. And it's jaw-dropping, it's eye-watering to think of that disconnect. So why can't he see it? Why won't he see it? Again, he's never been trained. His daily reading of the gastroenterology literature never really seriously mentions it. He's afraid of being chastised by his colleagues, being called the nuts and berries doctor. And he's eating steaks and burgers himself. He's not going to make much of a change, and he's overweight, and he's on 2 medications for his blood sugar and blood pressure. And so they're stuck in this paradigm. They're kind of frozen in this tomb of ignorance. I hate to say it, but they just don't know. And it's up to us. And thankfully, there's getting to be more and more plant-based specialists, plant-based cardiologists, plant-based gastroenterologists, plant-based pathologists, radiologists. They're starting. The lights are going on in all these different specialties, and hopefully they can't hear it from us, but from one of their colleagues. They carry more weight. So slowly that wall is cracking, and I grew up in the 1960s, and I remember the big bad old Berlin Wall between East and West Berlin. It was the most ominous, terrible symbol of brute power. We thought it would never come down. But 20 years of commerce and blue jeans and Beatles music, and in 1989, boy, we saw that wall come down in a weekend. That's how quickly, when people get it, how quickly things can change. And that's why we're working in our Moving Medicine Forward initiative to put more cracks in that wall till finally it all comes down and the young med students are graduating. Of course, I ask my patients what they eat. Oh, yes, I work with a plant-based dietitian. I send them all to her. She does the counseling. I send them back. We're getting great progress in our patients. That's how medicine should be practiced. And slowly we're moving in that direction. It's like turning an ocean liner, but we're slowly getting there.
So I want to kind of take this time to highlight kind of what you're doing with the Moving Medicine Forward initiative. And for our viewers who maybe they don't really understand kind of how important that is, I wanted to highlight a couple things here. From a recent, I think it was a 2016 AAMC survey, showed that less than 25% of medical schools actually require a nutrition course, which is is terrifying and shocking. I know that personally, I graduated medical school in 2019, and I had a grand total of, I think, 6 hours of an online nutrition course that we kind of clicked through on the weekend in between studying, anatomy and something else. So it wasn't given much attention, and it's still not being given attention to this day. Another interesting point that I saw was a recent survey of internal medicine interns showed that 94% of those internal medicine interns agreed that it was their obligation to discuss nutrition with their patients, but only 14% reported feeling adequately trained to provide nutrition counseling. So those are your doctors, your first year internal medicine doctors, who the vast majority of them don't feel comfortable talking to their patients and giving them recommendations on nutrition. And that's a little bit frightening. And then the last thing that I personally find shocking, and especially since I just recently finished my family medicine licensing board, so I'm kind of hot on the board path. But in medical school, I took three board exams, and then I took my family medicine licensing board exams. So that's probably over well over 1,000 questions that I've taken on board exams. Not one question is related to or entertaining the idea of nutrition or a whole food plant-based diet as being a helpful adjunct to healthy medicine. And I just find that unbelievable. And hopefully our listeners can kind of grasp how crazy that is, that our medical curriculum is kind of so far off. So I'd like you to talk about kind of what you're doing to help improve that.
Sure. Thank you for asking. I was in the same position as you are. I just gobsmacked at the lack of information of this powerful tool. What if we didn't teach patients about, or teach young doctors about penicillin, or about how to intubate a trachea? What if we let them graduate without that information? That's how blatant and neglectful that education would be. Well, again, you and I stand here open-jawed when we hear numbers like that, when the vast majority of our colleagues are treating patients who are sitting before them because of what they're eating. All the specialties, the gastroenterologist, the internist, the cardiologists, the pediatricians. Clogged arteries is a pediatric disease. It starts in childhood with the burgers and the hot dogs and the fries, etc. But dermatology, neurology, renal medicine, all of them, all dealing largely with the results of the standard Western diet that sends a deluge of cooked animal muscle, sugars, oils, processed foods, dairy proteins through the bloodstream every 4 hours, day after day, month after month, year after year. Well, it's like putting diesel fuel, kerosene, in a gasoline burning engine. It's the wrong fuel, and eventually it damages the parts and clogs up the fuel lines, etc. And that's these diseases we're seeing. And then we're puzzled, why do those arteries clog? Why did the patient go diabetic? I've got a sign in my office here, it's the food, it's been the food all along. That's the reality of it. And again, the beauty and the excitement, you get them on a plant-based diet, because we're basically plant-eating hominids. We've got the same basic digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have. And they're up in the trees eating leaves and fruits, and they don't develop clogged arteries. They don't go diabetic. They don't get colitis. They're eating their natural plant-based foods. And when we eat a plant-based food stream, amazing, within days, the obesity begins to melt away and the arteries relax and the high blood pressure comes down and the sore joints stop hurting and the psoriatic skin begins to clear up and the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing so much, the migraine headaches get better, and they turn into normal, healthy people right before your eyes. And I tell the students, I show them these before and after pictures. So what greater gift could you want for your patient? Why are you going into medicine if not to help people regain their true state of health? Do you want to heal these patients or don't you? If you do, and you see them every month just to raise their dose of beta blockers and insulin, you're not getting to the true cause of their malady while they're sitting in front of you. And so But again, as I'm realizing, these fundamental truths, why didn't somebody tell me this in medical school? Why didn't somebody say, first of all, these are reversible diseases? Big bad diabetes, big bad hypertension. You'll take these pills the rest of your life. You'll always be diabetic. This is what was imprinted in my head. I wish someone told me, by the way, these are reversible diseases. You get them on a healthy diet and lifestyle, these diseases go away. I wish somebody had told me that. And we're going to medical schools and telling the young students that, first of all, these are reversible diseases, and a whole food plant-based diet is the key to reversing them. Yes, you got to do other things. You need enough sleep and exercise and families, stability, etc. But it's the food, it's the food, it's the food. You just can't get healthy eating the standard American diet. And so we're trying to turn the light on with my lecture, What I Wish I Learned in Medical School About Nutrition, because that's really the truth of it. But now we've been able to hire a dietitian who will follow up at the medical schools where I speak. And to keep the flame alive, we're going to be doing monthly journal clubs and case discussions and showing films and bringing in guest speakers to keep that interest alive, that it's the food that your patients are eating. That's the message. So hopefully when they get their diploma, when they do their residency, you can't unring the bell. They say once you look behind the curtain, you can't pretend you don't know what's behind the curtain. It's a plant-based diet is behind that curtain, doctor. And so by awakening as many students as possible, one, we want them to know the truth of this, but then we want to start a quiet little revolution from the ground up. We want to give them studies and say, ask your professors. Next time you're in diabetes clinic, ask your professor, do you think the patient's diet was a player in developing this disease? Next, if you're in cardiovascular clinic, is there any element of reversibility in these clogged arteries, doctor? Yes, there is. Here's the studies. And so we're trying to make it a thing, to use a common expression these days. And by that I mean 10 years ago, no one knew. Did you know anything about the microbiome? Did you even hear about it? We're physicians, we didn't really hear about it, but it broke into the medical literature, then it broke into the public awareness and the popular media. Now everybody knows about it. It's a thing. People know about the microbiome. They know the effect of antibiotics. They know that food. Well, we've got to get plant-based nutrition. We're trying to make it a thing. Reversing disease with plant-based nutrition, it's a thing. You need to know about it. And so that's what we're trying to do with moving medicine forward. If people want to know more about our work and support our work, we got to pay our dietitian. Please go to my website, drklaper.com. I trust you'll have the info down at the bottom of the screen here, and click on Moving Medicine Forward. And I've been averaging about 2 medical schools a week. Kind of a left-handed gift from the COVID virus. I used to go from airport to airport to airport to medical school to medical school, medical school in person. But now no one, those days are over. No one wants to gather in a big lecture hall these days with COVID. So now we've gone electronic, and now I'm reaching more medical students than ever. I was just at Buffalo and at Rutgers last week, UC San Diego, University of Alberta 2 weeks ago. And so we're reaching lots of med students to create a generation of nutritionally aware health practitioners, not even physicians. The dentists need this, the nurses, the pharmacists, the physical therapists. They're all dealing with people with diet-based diseases. So we want to make it a thing for all of them, that they can do great good with a plant-based diet.
Absolutely. And I think I just want to highlight one of the things you said, because it's something that I like to use a lot, and I find that it does a good job ruffling some feathers. But what I like to tell people, or my coworkers or attendings, are you trying to heal these people or aren't you? And as a family medicine doc, that really kind of hits you in the heart, because all of us are, we're mostly good people. We wanted to come into this for a reason, to help people. And when you phrase it like that, it really sinks it in, and how you're really not doing everything you can for your patient if you're not current with this information and you're not preaching it to your patients. So I just want to thank you for everything you're doing for moving medicine forward, and keeping it alive.
Yeah. And I have a question, I guess. So as a non-scientist, kind of being on the food manufacturing and looking at it from a legal standpoint, what I always notice is that as soon as something is put out there scientifically, we have research on the whole food plant-based diet, reversing some of these major killers, there's always a counter effect. Well, people like to say, well, we don't really, there's not conclusive data that says exactly this exact thing as far as, what about 5% animal products? And so I wanted to get your opinion. Why is there so much controversy around healthy eating, and why are there so many different diets that pop up? So there's the vegan diet, and then all of a sudden now there's the carnivore diet, something so extremely polar opposite. And it's almost from a consumer standpoint, we see media, we hear people that we think have authority to speak on nutrition, and so we're so easily influenced because there's just so much controversy, and that doubt causes us to question, well, maybe 5% animal product is really good, or maybe we should be, it really kind of causes so much confusion. And so I'm curious, why do you think there are so many different diets, and why do you think there's so much controversy there? And then in your opinion, what is the ideal diet for humans?
$64 million question there. Well, to borrow a phrase from my friend and colleague, Dr. John McDougall, why do people keep eating these diets? They love to hear good news about bad habits. They like that taste of steak in their mouth. So anything that can justify it's a good thing to be eating that meat. Oh, okay, doctor says it's a good thing. And to justify this flesh eating, which is an abnormal diet. No gorilla eats meat at all, let alone 3 times a day. No bonobo, no advanced primate eats animal flesh. I'm sure the odd grasshopper probably winds up in the gorilla's mouth on the leaves or whatever, but they don't go out and hunt animals and tear their flesh and eat it. No advanced primate does that, and we didn't used to either. In ancient Paleolithic time, most of our calories came not from mammoth meat, but from the roots and tubers that the women of the tribe spent all day foraging for and bringing back berries and edible grasses, etc. We were starchivores then, we're starchivores now. Our anatomy and physiology is geared to eating plants. We have fingers on our hands, not claws. We've got small mouths with flat grinding molar teeth and rotary jaw joints for biting into starches and roots and fruits. We don't have big flesh-tearing fangs. We're clearly, plant-eating hominids, but people, like that taste of steak in their mouth. So they justify it and with these various theories. And one thing they notice that they use as a selling point is, and I've had patients, fellow physicians who are real paleo pushers, who say, hey, my patients get healthy. I get them on lots of meat and some veggies, and boy, they lose weight. Their diabetes gets better. Their blood sugars come down. Don't tell me it's a bad diet, man. My patients get healthy this way. Well, the paleo folks advocate some things I agree with. They say no caveman ever crushed the fat out of olives and poured oil on their food, so they're down on oils. They say no caveman ever ground wheat into flour and made vegan donuts, and so they're down on flour products. And no caveman ever milked a dairy cow, so they're down on dairy products. Well, you pull the oil and the dairy and the flour products out of your diet, man, you're going to lose some weight. And the weight loss itself will make your lipids better. They'll make your insulin sensitivity better. You'll get some benefits. And they say, see, it's healthy. But I say, after 50 years of medicine, I tell them, don't be seduced by these early changes. Any improvement on the standard American diet is going to produce some benefits in health. But man, you're advocating these folks pack their intestines full of decaying animal flesh 2-3 times a day. Year after year after year. This is a recipe For colon cancer, these are all cooked animal muscle fragments that are fully carcinogens, smearing on the colon wall. You're setting these people up for an epidemic of colon cancer. The artery damage that the TMAO, won't go into it, but this chemical that gets produced by the bacteria in meat-eating intestines, that's going to give them heart attacks and strokes. We see all the free radicals and advanced glycation end products, sorry for the jargonism, damages the arteries in the brain that are going to give these folks Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia. It's a high-fat diet that clogs insulin receptors. They're going to wind up with type 2 diabetes. The meat spawns microbes in their intestinal wall that invade the gut wall, setting off colitis and Crohn's disease. This is a recipe for disaster. These folks are setting themselves up for an epidemic of heart attacks and strokes and dementia and diabetes and colitis. And so, even though that steak may taste good temporarily, the price is going to be absolutely dreadful. And we're sorry to be a little cynical, but with many of these, and they're younger docs usually, advocating this. This is drive-by medical advice. Oh yeah, you ought to be eating paleo, and then they go off to their new clinic appointment in Phoenix at their luxury spa clinic there, and they never see 10 years later when this guy passes his first bloody stool from that colon cancer. They're going to be long gone. When this lady has her stroke 15 years later from that carotid plaque that this diet gave her, this guy won't even see it. And so I fear it's very fragmented advice. No one's eaten this diet for 20, 30, 40 years. People have eaten the blue zone diet, plant-based diets for centuries, and you wind up lean and healthy. But this is book-selling stuff, again, to justify our current diet. But our current diet is killing us, killing the animals, killing the planet. We can't keep doing this. The lights are flashing all around. Individual humans, you want to be healthy, adopt a plant-based diet. And Homo sapiens out there, you want to keep living on this planet. You can't keep raising and slaughtering 80 billion creatures every year and cutting down your forests doing it. Adopt a plant-based diet. The lights are flashing. We've used meat eating up. We've used fishing up. No matter what role it played in the past, we've strip mined the oceans. We've cut down the forests. These are finite resources, and we've used them up. Let them heal. Time for us to heal, time for the planet to heal, and a plant-based diet is the key to all of that. So when I hear them say, oh, you ought to be eating paleo, everybody ought to be eating paleo, it's the best diet. Sir, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Are you truly advocating a flesh-based diet 3 times a day for 8 billion people? Yeah, the whole thing is so bizarre on so many levels. So I tell folks, don't be seduced by this is silly stuff here. We are plant-eating creatures. Honor that in the most natural form you can. Or Oreos and Coca-Colas might be vegan, but we're talking about whole food, plant-based diet. Keep those rice and beans and greens and fruits and veggies and salads and soups going in, and you're going to win the game on every level.
And I think that's one of the things that I get so frustrated when you see the fad diets, because it's one isolated study that may show it's like some interim short benefit, but there is no longevity studies. There's nothing that really speaks to the totality of not just a person's health, but the planet's health and the overall sustainability of what you're doing. And I always say it's the multiplier effect. If you told 1,000 people or 1 million people or 100 million people to do that action, is it going to hurt the planet? And if paleo diet, the answer is absolutely yes. A carnivore diet, absolutely terrifying to say only eat animal products. And so it really is something that I think is an unfortunate aspect of social media, because things can spread so quickly. And that misinformation gets people excited because, like you said, it gives us an excuse to say, oh, I can eat bacon all day. I'm like, okay, great. That's my scientific proof I needed, that it may cause my body to go into ketosis. And so that means now, but that's like one tiny sliver of it. There's the epigenetic factors, this, the entire aspect that you have to look at nutrition, because it's something that we do every day. and we're going to do for the rest of our life, and every human has to do it. So it's selfish of us to look at these fad diets in a way that we're not taking the rest of the world into consideration, which really makes me sad when I see, physicians and prominent researchers making these claims that really are so narrow-minded, both in its scientific analysis as well as its humanitarian analysis is sad. But one thing I did want to get your opinion on, because I know you wrote a book a while back about whole food plant-based diets for pregnant women and for infants. And, I'm really passionate about the first 1,000 days of nutrition. And we have so much research now that's showing that this is in a critical window of nutrition. And so deficiencies in nutrition in this window can have irreversible damage for the rest of a child's life. So if you could speak a little bit to, your suggestions for pregnant women and for infants and a plant-based diet, that would be awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. It's an ultimately important issue. When I was a young doc back in Vancouver in 1973 and 4, I was doing home deliveries. I was delivering lots of babies. And about 8 or 10, the word got around that I was plant-based. And so these pregnant vegan women, beautiful beings, as the later stage of their pregnancy, would contact me, ask if I'd deliver their baby. And sure, I did a lot of home deliveries, and I delivered a dozen of these beautiful babies. Every one of these young mothers were told during their pregnancy by their families and found, you're vegan while you're pregnant? Oh, that baby's going to be undernourished. They're going to come out weighing 2 pounds and all scrawny and growth stunted. And you're going to have all sorts of pregnancy problems. Well, it turned out, these women were just determined they're just not going to be eating meat or dairy. They were committed vegans. Well, just the opposite happened. Every one of them had these picture book pregnancies. They all gained ideal amounts of weight. None were underweight, none were overweight. And when they went into labor, all of them had these, no labor is easy, but there were no forceps needed, no cesarean sections. I didn't have to refer any to hospital for operative delivery at all. And every one of these babies were gorgeous. They would come out 6 pounds, 7 pounds, full vigorous APGAR scores of 10. And again, no preeclampsia, no postpartum hemorrhages. And so this graphic demonstration, yes, you can do a healthy pregnancy and healthy delivery on a plant-based diet. I mean, that was the end of the case there. They made their case. And then I watched these lovely vegan parents raise their children, their newborns, as vegans. Well, the years went by. That was 40 years ago. These kids, I watched them grow up into healthy, beautiful, bright, strong, lovely young men and women. A number of them married and had children of their own. I've now seen 2 generations of vegan children grow up into full, healthy, gorgeous adults. And so the case is settled in my mind. It's not an issue. We absolutely can do this. And again, what a gift to give your child, to raise them on a plant-based diet. They will never be the fat kid in class. The odds are they're not going to wind up with asthma and acne and so many of the problems that happen with their colleagues who are eating meat and dairy and sugars. And they wind up teaching their classmates a few things when the kids ask why they don't eat meat. But it's a gift beyond measure to raise a child into a young adult that isn't going to have medical issues. It stays out of the clutches of people like me and Kevin. And so you got to do it right. Again, you can't. The mom and dad can't be junk food vegans, and you can't raise your child as a junk food vegan. They got to really eat the rice and beans and greens and fruits and veggies, and all that goes into a healthy plant-based diet. But if you do, you need some vitamin B12 and maybe a little iron early on, and yes, a little supplement here and there can help. But people around the world have been raising kids on plant-based diets since the beginning of time. It's not a radical, strange thing to do. We have this idea that children need meat, they need dairy. No, they do not. No gorilla feeds its child meat or dairy, and we don't have to either. So it's absolutely doable. I wrote a little book. It's out of print now on how to raise a child. And now there's wonderful, much better books than mine. A good one is called Nourish by dietitian Brenda Davis and pediatrician Resma Shaw. These are both vegan mothers, one dietitian and a doctor who've raised kids. And they take you right through all the life chapters there on what you ought to be eating on as far as a plant-based diet goes. There's wonderful works now to help people get that guidance. But just Google raising vegan children and your screen will fill up on great ideas on how to do that. But it's not a radical, dangerous thing to do. It's the most loving, sane, nutritionally wise thing that you can do for your children.
Absolutely. And I guess if you kind of touched upon the dairy a little bit, it is, very much shocking that in the US, most pediatricians, they're going to say you have to have, dairy based, and, milk is essential for healthy kids. And it is something that is, still kind of mind blowing to me with all this research out there that shows that we don't need it. And there's actually all these negative effects. And so many people that I know that have babies, their bodies are rejecting the dairy. It's one of the most commonly seen allergens out there. And yet the medical community is still so stuck on saying we need, whey-based formula and the baby needs milk until 2. And I'm curious what your thoughts are just on dairy and infancy.
Right. The truth is, and if you get any pediatrician alone in a room there, so without their colleagues hearing, and the truth is, sir and madam, you have no more need for the milk of a cow than you do the milk of a giraffe. Would you feed your kid moose milk or rat milk or dog milk? Why do we think that this white liquid has some magic properties? What's it got? It got protein and some sugars in it and some fats. Well, guess what? There is plenty of milk available for a healthy child. It's called their mother's breast. And children should be breastfed at least till age 18 months, but preferably 2 years. So that lovely white liquid is coming into the child, bringing all sorts of protein and vitamins and minerals and antibodies, etc. But by age 2, when the child starts biting on the nipple and mom gets the idea weaning time has come, you got a 2-year-old running around. That child now has a stomach and a digestive system that can easily transfer to solid foods. Now he's got a small stomach. He can't fill it up with lettuce and apples and these high fiber foods. But the more concentrated digestible foods, the bean spreads and the hummus and the nut butters and you get a baby food grinder, a little plastic device, and whatever mom and dad has for dinner, the lentil stew and the steamed veggies, grind them up and spoon them into the child, mix a little applesauce, and in it goes. And the child can make the transition from mom's breast milk to a solid food diet without ever going into dairy land. It's just an absolutely unnecessary detour. And as you say, I think as the kids are guzzling down that cow's milk in the bottle, it's going up into their ears. They get ear infections. They inhale droplets into their lungs. They get asthma from it. Now, there's nothing healthy about this, and there's a good chance it increases the risk of type 1 diabetes. Again, it's a pretty irrational idea here, but it's been part of the American ethos, for a long time. The dairy farmer out there milking his cow, but it's gotten much more dark attached to that. Why? Because my uncle's dairy farm in the 50s, when a cow became fertile, we'd lock her up in the stanchion, call the man from Badger Breeders. He'd come out and ram a tube of bull semen into the cow's uterus. No cow like that. She'd get pregnant and she would stop giving milk. Pregnant mammals don't lactate, and there's a good reason for that. And my uncle, he had nothing to do, pulled out a little notebook with bossy number 17, won't give milk till she has her calf in the spring. And that was just, he had to accept the biology. We had 49 cows. Well, in today's modern dairy operations, they're milking 1,000 cows, 1,500 cows twice a day. They can't afford to have their best milkers go offline for 9 months while they're carrying their next calf. So now they've genetically modified the cows. All American dairy cows are GMO, genetically modified. So now they will give milk, even though they're pregnant with their next calf, they're sucking milk off these cows. Well, when a female mammal is pregnant, whether it's a fox or a cow or a woman, her body is filled with estrogens. Makes her hair grow, make her uterus big, breast big. Well, it gets into the milk. And now we know milk from pregnant cows is filled with estrogens. These are not the puny little phytoestrogens from soy. These are official estrone, estradiol, estriol, pregnanediol, the progesterone. These are official mammalian estrogens. And we're telling these kids, oh, eat your yogurt, eat your ice cream, eat your cheese, and drink your milk. And we're pouring all these bovine estrogens down their gullets. And little girls are going through puberty at age 8 and 9. How could this be happening? Well, look, you're feeding them cow estrogens. And you follow these girls into womanhood, they get a nasty instance of breast cancer. If they develop a breast cancer and they're eating baby calf growth fluid filled with growth factors, the breast cancer grows faster. Estrogens make the prostate gland in men unstable. The more dairy a boy eats, the higher his risk of developing prostate cancer as a man on every level. It's for baby calves, and I tell them in my lectures, I tell the audience, go in the bathroom, have a look in the mirror. If you've got a big snout with whiskers and big ears, if you're a baby calf, cool, enjoy your milk and yogurt. But if you're not, man, you have no need for it. It's filled with these toxic estrogens and pesticides and antibiotics that they give these animals. It's toxic stuff, including the cheese and the ice cream made from it. Enough already. And nowadays it's 2022, and in the dairy case in the supermarket, you've got all these wonderful plant-based alternatives now. You got almond yogurts and soy cheeses and cashew nut butters, all this stuff. There's no need for any of this. Now, these are processed foods. They're not the bastion of health, but these are novelty foods. Don't be drinking 2 quarts of soy milk a day, but a little splash on your cereal. In the evening, my wife will have berries, a little bit of rice milk or oat milk on it. That's how you use these things. And 1 spoonful of almond ice cream that's our big indulgence. That's how to use these foods. And they're novelty foods. If you do that, you can leave the whole dairy scene behind. And we should, because the dairy operations are an ecological horror for the manure they develop, for all the corn that gets shoveled down these animals' gullets, for all the greenhouse gases that get released producing that corn. It's time to let the dairy whole thing fade into the American past, like whaling, and kerosene lamps. Enough with the dairy already. We'll be much better off without it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. So shifting gears a little bit, something that you touched on just a little bit ago, but our listeners are used to hearing us talk a little bit about advanced glycation end products. And I wanted to get your opinion on how you feel that these A.G.Es are impacting our health and longevity. And do you feel that this is one of the main differences between the junk food vegan and the whole food plant-based diet, and how those 2 diets can be vastly different in the outcomes of our health?
Dr. Lyon, I compliment you on such a sophisticated question, and that you're teaching about this is so important. This is another one of those who knew, and I wish someone had told me about this in med school, and I'm telling the young students that I lecture at. These are advanced glycation end products. What's that? Well, when you spill maple syrup on the breakfast table, everything gets sticky. Well, same thing happens when we eat sugar as a food. It sticks to proteins throughout our body. Now, it's okay to have a teaspoon of sugar in your tea as a flavoring is okay. But when you're eating a candy bar, you're eating a vegan donut or coffee cake, you're eating sugar as a food. And it was never meant to be eaten that way. And it floods our tissues and sticks to proteins. And our own body heat oxidizes these sugar sticky proteins into what are called advanced glycation end products. I'll put a pin in that. But even a bigger source is cooking animal muscle, grilling the chicken breast and roasting this and broiling the steak produces huge amounts of these advanced glycation end products. So between the processed sugars and the meats we're eating, we're flooding our tissues with these advanced glycation end products. These are glycosylated oxidized proteins. What's so bad about them? They generate what's called free radicals that rip electrons off. They're like molecular terrorists, and they rip electrons off proteins and enzymes, and they rip electrons off cell membranes and your DNA and your artery walls, and they are molecular terrorists, and they cause so much damage. They cause aging in the body. They set off cancer multiplication or proliferation. And it turns out that a few of our feared diseases are particularly influenced or driven by A.G.Es. And again, another one is who knew. There's a common condition among women. The biggest cause of infertility is something called PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome. Well, it turns out that the ovaries have a zillion, the most greatest concentration of receptors for A.G.Es are in the ovaries. And so when a woman is eating a lot of meats and sugars, etc., her ovaries are getting packed up with these A.G.Es, and it damages her abilities to ovulate, to conceive, it causes so many problems. So PCOS turns out to be an A.G.E-driven disease. Alzheimer's disease, when we look at the arteries of the brains of people who died of Alzheimer's, their arteries are thickened and swollen. And when you stain for A.G.Es, their arteries are full of A.G.Es. And so you think of all the folks in the nursing homes eating their burgers and their ice cream, and what they're doing to the arteries that fostering the disease and put them there in the first place. But again, it's a pediatric disease. We're fostering these diseases all through our early lives with every fast food meal. And then the arteries themselves that eventually turn into clogged up atherosclerotic arteries that lead to heart attacks and strokes. Well, it turns out that A.G.Es are plastered against the wall of the arteries and really damaging the endothelial linings that initiate this process. So these molecular saboteurs are causing havoc and damage in vital structures throughout our body. And it's totally unnecessary. The gorillas are up in the trees eating raw leaves and fruits, and they don't generate A.G.Es, and they don't die of Alzheimer's and strokes. So again, honor our nature, our plant-eating nature, our plant-eating anatomy, and this whole thing fades in the rearview mirror. But as long as we keep eating the burgers and the pizzas and the steaks and the ice cream and the soft drinks, we're pouring our body full of A.G.Es, and it comes back to bite us in these dreadful diseases.
Yeah, thank you I love the way that you explain it, because it really is. It's, when you look at just the Western diet, it's not just one or two things that are, that we need to pull out. It's the entire system A.G.E is a huge component. But then there's so many other things that that's why it's such kind of like a magic bullet in so many ways. Because when you take all these processed foods, these animal-based products out of your diet, and you just let the body have the food that it wants, clean, whole foods. And even if you're cooking food, plant-based foods, even minimum. So you're steaming things. It's less cooking. Your amount of A.G.Es is dramatically less. I mean, you're thinking of, a salad that has, a few hundred A.G.Es, and this is a big salad versus a piece of chicken that can have 10,000 A.G.Es. I mean, the difference is so vast, and it's just another way of looking at the whole food plant-based diet with so much research now behind it that we get excited about talking about A.G.Es, because it is one way that we can communicate that to people where they can physically see it. And now we can test for it, and we can measure it in foods. And it's such an exciting opportunity. So when you mention that, we get excited, because that's another way people it can sink in for them, and they can physically see that, hopefully soon we have biomarkers where people can test that, and physicians can speak to their patients about A.G.Es as a real, kind of gauge of where your health at is in this moment. So I'm very excited that the way that you explain it, because these really are molecular terrorists, the way you're saying them. I mean, they cause so much damage. And that's why, we're so, passionate about not
Wonderful.
having processed foods in your diet. But I wanted to ask you one last question because I know we could probably talk for hours, and we would love to. But throughout all the years of you being a plant-based physician and a true leader in the whole food plant-based community, I would say, what is the most important lesson that you've learned along the way?
Oh my. If you'll allow me to be a little fluffy here and hold you, be kind to each other, but be kind to your body. You want that. Don't eat death. Don't eat violence from the slaughterhouse because it wreaks its own kind of violence on us. A diet that is non-violent, and things didn't suffer in its production. Is you're being kind to your arteries and kind to your microbiome with a whole food plant-based diet. You're being kind to the animals. You're being kind to the planet. And the example you set for others is also being kind to them. So, you wake in the morning and I think, what can I do to make this a more loving day? In my interactions on the phone and my interviews with patients, but the squirrels we feed in the backyard, the neatening up of the front yard there. It's about being kind to everything around you in your life there. And a plant-based diet is the epitome of that. It's a non-violent, loving diet on every level. So the kindness that you want to perpetuate in your daily life becomes the watchword for your diet as well. If nothing, I've never heard a carrot scream, and that's the whole point of it. So be kind, but be true to the truth of the physiology. But it all comes back to the same. We're plant-eating creatures. No one's out there picketing again. We got to get rid of those violent gorillas. They're up there eating leaves and fruit. And we should emulate on a human level there. So a nonviolent diet that fills our nutritional needs is the best thing we can all do.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Dr. Klaper, I just want to thank you so much for everything that you're doing for our community, for medicine, for moving medicine forward. I know that personally you're one of my role models, and it's an honor to be able to talk to you today and learn from you and continue to learn from you. So from the bottom of my heart, I just want to thank you for being on part of this podcast today.
It was a beautiful interview. You guys are earnest and skillful, and you give me hope. Your generation. So keep doing what you're doing. Spread the truth, spread the light, and we'll make it a better world for everyone who comes after us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
To everyone listening, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of #FoodTruth.
And if you share our mission for Food Truth, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe, and visit antiages.org for more helpful tips and information.
And remember, don't forget to eat your broccoli.